Cassowary Coast Regional Council has 525 kilometres of gravel roads in their network. Council does maintenance grading and resheeting grading. Maintenance grading is to provide a good running surface on the road to take out potholes and scouring due to the wet weather. Gravel resheeting is a 150 layer put on the existing road to improve crossfall and drainage. Gravel resheeting is laid out with a truck, pushed over with a grader to a 150mm layer, compacted with a roller and water cart. Council resheet approximately 35 kilometres of road per year at a cost of $3 million per annum. Council approximately does 400 kilometres of road maintenance at a cost of $1.4 million. Council provide a maintenance grade on roads as required, and after a number of years provide a resheet for wear and tear. Always slow down on gravel roads and drive to conditions. Cassowary Coast Regional Council has 525 kilometres of gravel roads in their network. Council does maintenance grading and resheeting grading. Maintenance grading is to provide a good running surface on the road to take out potholes and scouring due to the wet weather. Gravel resheeting is a 150 layer put on the existing road to improve crossfall and drainage. Gravel resheeting is laid out with a truck, pushed over with a grader to a 150mm layer, compacted with a roller and water cart. Council resheet approximately 35 kilometres of road per year at a cost of $3 million per annum. Council approximately does 400 kilometres of road maintenance at a cost of $1.4 million. Council provide a maintenance grade on roads as required, and after a number of years provide a resheet for wear and tear. Always slow down on gravel roads and drive to conditions. Cassowary Coast Regional Council has 525 kilometres of gravel roads in their network. Council does maintenance grading and resheeting grading. Maintenance grading is to provide a good running surface on the road to take out potholes and scouring due to the wet weather. Gravel resheeting is a 150 layer put on the existing road to improve crossfall and drainage. Gravel resheeting is laid out with a truck, pushed over with a grader to a 150mm layer, compacted with a roller and water cart. Council resheet approximately 35 kilometres of road per year at a cost of $3 million per annum. Council approximately does 400 kilometres of road maintenance at a cost of $1.4 million. Council provide a maintenance grade on roads as required, and after a number of years provide a resheet for wear and tear. Always slow down on gravel roads and drive to conditions.
fellow councillors, staff and members of the public viewing this special meeting via live streaming. Good morning all and welcome. I believe that strong and effective leadership is delivered through the adoption of sound strategies. Our newly formed council has spent many hours considering our strategy to be delivered, working together as one. And what we are about to consider allows council to put in place an organisational structure which will serve our strategies within these unprecedented difficult times enduring a pandemic and an economic challenge never seen in our lifetimes. It is a basic function of council that it sets an organisational structure, and at law this can only be done by a resolution of council. The requirement to set an organisational structure may not be delegated under the Act. I estimate that the engagement of a consultant to make recommendations to council on this organisational structure would add a time delay which would not be logical given we are poised shortly to set a budget, and the cost of consultancy fees would be unacceptable given our budgetary challenges. I have therefore instructed the Chief Executive Officer to provide options which council will consider today. The CEO has informed me that the Office of the Financial Officer and People and Culture have analysed our circumstances and are the authors of what we are about to consider. As Mayor, I can guarantee no instruction has been delivered to the CEO for any restructure of the blue-collar sector. It is critical that we recognise that our deliberations concern structure and strategy and make no personal reflections upon the individuals who may be affected by the restructure. This is about structure, strategy and the opportunity for economies of scale, providing savings, and is not related to personalities or performance. Mr. CEO, you may care to ask Mr. Crosbie to start his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wonder, are you going to ask for conflicts of interest at this stage?
Mate. Yeah, good point. Councillors, the conflict of interest. Please use this opportunity to make public any material personal interest or conflict of interest, real or perceived, in respect of items in the agenda. Councillors should use this opportunity to disclose and/or comment on other councillors and/or staff interests in accordance with the Act and regulations.
With your permission, Mr. Mayor, I'll declare a possible conflict in respect of item 1.2, method for CEO annual review. As soon as that matter is discussed, I'll leave the meeting room, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Any further declarations of conflict?
Mr. Chair, again, in relation to item 1.2, I'm going to declare a perceived conflict of interest. There have been issues kicking around this for a while. I personally don't believe I have a conflict, but in an abundance of caution, especially in the age of Belcara, I will also leave the room.
Thank you, Councillor Baines. Any further conflicts to be declared? If not, I'd just like initially to acknowledge the traditional owners, past, present and emerging, and now hand over to Mr. Crosbie to present his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The agenda item this morning, as the Mayor has introduced, is in relation to a review of the organisational structure. This does follow a request to review that. As the Mayor introduced, this review is conducted by a team consisting of the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer and myself. We believe that the structure that and the report that is presented here today does achieve proposed amendments to the structure consistent with the Act, are there as appropriate to the performance of the local government's responsibilities. The Mayor did set out the unprecedented effects that have been upon Council in relation to COVID-19, and that has also influenced the urgency of the conduct of this review to contribute to financial outcomes that do demonstrate a responsible approach to austerity, relieving that financial burden on ratepayers, and also without any significant impact on quantity or quality of service delivery. The proposed changes that do result from the review in the first year of operation are in the order of approximately $902,000. That figure does take into account some allowances for any employment termination payments that may result as a result of potential redundancies. I would stress that a factor of the report is that this will go to consultation with both unions and employees prior to any final decision. In subsequent years to the first, the estimated savings, the headline savings are in excess of $1 million, in the order of $1,038,000. There are 3 resolutions on the table for Council to consider today. I will read those. They are to endorse the proposed changes to the organisational structure summarised at Attachment 1 and detailed in the body of the report as being appropriate to the performance of the local government's responsibilities, enabling the proposed organisation structure to proceed to consultation processes with unions and employees where necessary and in accordance with the commitments set out in the Cassowary Coast Regional Council Certified Agreement 2019. Secondly, that in circumstances where a role may be redundant following a council decision to approve the implementation of a new structure, and that is following consultation, that opportunities are firstly explored for retraining and redeployment where reasonable and practicable, and that redundancy and retrenchment applies as a last resort. And thirdly, to ensure that if the proposed structure is decided upon following consultation, that the role of Manager Community Relationships and Services review existing functions that have reported to the Manager Community and Regional Development role with the team or those team members in those functions, and also establish and execute plans for improvement of community development and services within the team. It is important to note that the principles, they are set out by which this review was conducted in the report, and I will just also draw attention to the various measures that were considered in the report and other considerations. I will take it that that detail has been read. I'll now move to the actual changes in the report. These are summarised on page 19 of the report, so I'll step through those one by one. The proposed changes are, commencing with the office of the Chief Executive Officer, the position of Executive Manager is proposed to be removed from the structure. Secondly, position of Digital Communications Advisor is proposed to be removed from the structure. Role of Program Manager in that office is proposed to be abolished, and this role, then a new role created in the office of CFO or Chief Financial Officer with amended responsibilities, and the new role to be titled Business Opportunities and Improvement Lead. The Executive Personal Assistant to the Executive Manager, that role is also removed from the structure. The incumbent of that role moved to Delivery Services to review and with a reviewed set of responsibilities and retitled position of Support Officer. The Executive Personal Assistant to the Mayor will move our reporting relationship only to the Coordinated Governance role. Role of Senior Organisational Communications Officer will move to the Delivery Services Department and reports to redesigned role of Manager Community Relations and Services. The role of Senior Media Communications Advisor will move under the proposal to the Delivery Services Department and report to the redesigned role of Manager Community Relations and Services. For the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, the role of Graduate Accountant will be removed from the structure. There is nobody in this role presently. The new role, which is the redeployment opportunity for the Program Manager role, is Business Opportunities and Improvement Lead. The Business Analyst role is incorporated into the structure of the Office of the CFO, and in particular in the Information Services team, and this represents an opportunity for an existing admin officer from the Regulatory Services team to be redeployed into that position. Position of Systems Administrator, which exists in the Information Services team of the Chief Financial Office, is proposed to be removed from the structure. In the Delivery Services team, position of Local Law Officer, which is currently vacant, is proposed to be removed from the structure. That's one position. Position of Administrative Services Officer in the Regulatory Services team is also proposed to be made redundant as well, and then the occupant of that particular role redeployed to the role of Business Analyst. An Environmental Health Officer in the Regulatory Services team in Delivery Services Department, which has been vacant, is also proposed to be removed from the structure. In the Infrastructure Services Department, the role of Supervisor Wastewater Treatment, where the incumbent has announced plans for retirement, that role will not be filled in the proposal, and as a result, that role will be removed from the structure. The role of Disaster Coordinator in the Infrastructure Service Department is proposed to be moved to the Delivery Services Department and report to the Director of Delivery Services. In the Planning and Regional Development Department, the role of Director of Planning and Regional Development is proposed to be removed from the structure, that role redundant. The Executive PA to the Director of Planning and Regional Development is also proposed to be removed from the structure, and the incumbent of that role redeployed to any other opportunity that presents in the organisation structure. The role of Manager Regional and Community Development, as I mentioned earlier, has been redefined and also retitled to create a new role of Manager Community Relations and Services. So the Manager Regional and Community Development role will no longer exist and instead be replaced by a redefined role, Manager Community Relations and Services. Role of Regional Tourism and Development Officer is proposed to be removed from the structure. It is redundant. Role of Administration Officer for Planning and Regional Development is proposed to be removed from the structure as redundant, and the incumbent of that role, which is in fact over-established, returns to their substantive role. Role of Housing Administration Officer, which is a part-time role that exists, the coordinator for housing and community operations, will be supported by the support officer, which is a redeployment role that I mentioned earlier. In the People and Culture area, the role of Organisational Development Specialist will become redundant and replaced with a lower classified role, which will be titled Coordinator Skills Development under the proposal. They are the proposed changes in the report, and that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Crosby. Any questions for Mr Crosby or comments from the floor? Councillors? Yeah, Councillor Millwood.
I've just got a few words to say here. I'm unable to support this organisational structure, as this proposal has been prepared by the new councillors, has not been prepared by the new councillors, as mentioned in the information notice provided to the public. It is an unrealistic expectation from council to think new councillors have the ability to make a decision on a proposal that we don't even fully understand, given that we've been here 4 weeks. We as new councillors have not been given the required information or time to enable us to make an informed decision which follows council's core values of respect, integrity and courage. In my opinion, This restructure has not been carried out in a manner that displays transparency, unbiased opinion or conflicts of interest. In my opinion, this is bureaucracy gone wrong, and we need to support the engagement of an external consultant. At whatever cost this process can be unbiased, transparent and conflict-free. Thank you for your consideration in this request to postpone the proposal. I do support the savings to the ratepayers, and it's paramount, but purely on the grounds of the construction of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Any further comments from the floor? Councillor Farinelli.
Mine is not so short. As the councillor that holds the portfolio for economic development and tourism, this new structure is a slap in the face. Only 10 days ago, we all attended what, in my opinion, was the most well-planned and constructive workshop for planning and regional development. This workshop identified key projects to help move the region forward, and the project to top the list was agritourism, a platform you all know that I was elected on. While there was consensus from all councillors to start moving forward in this direction, and let's face it, that's what our number one job title is here, to set strategic direction, this new organisational structure in no ways supports that direction. In preparing this report, you have used data that, in your words, does not support, this is a quote, does not support any significant investment, growth or tourism occurring in the Cassowary coast in the immediate or foreseeable future. Well, I'm going to tell you that there will be no data on what is ahead of us, because we have never been a country coming out of confinement due to a pandemic. We have never been a country cut off from international travel, and we have never been a region with more potential to capture tourism dollars. So all this report tells me is that it lacks vision and confidence in what we can achieve as a region at a time when we need to encourage vision and build confidence more than ever. COVID-19 should not become an excuse for something that is so vitally important in our everyday operation as an organisation, and the process followed thus far in no way reflects our core values of respect, integrity and courage. Last Tuesday, all councillors just happened to end up at a meeting that Councillor Millwood had asked to attend with Councillor Baines. That is all councillors except for me. Following the meeting, I'm told the Mayor advised those councillors present that he and the Deputy Mayor had been looking at a new organisational structure with select staff, and that we would be all meeting as a matter of urgency at 8 o'clock the next morning. If it had not been that I met with Councillor Millwood later that afternoon to help her through her first agenda, I would not have known about the meeting. At 8 a.m. last Wednesday morning, we were presented with this new organisational structure, and its urgency was explained that savings made through the new structure could be reflected in the 2021 budget that has been greatly impacted by COVID-19. We all know that we must do everything we can to take pressure off the budget and our ratepayers, but our staff are people, and further changes to the organisation are too important to be rushed, certainly within the very tight timeline presented. Despite what is said in the media statement, councillors have not been given an opportunity to have input into this new structure. It was thrust on us with less than 24 hours' notice. The only two councillors that I am aware of that did have an opportunity to have input, to what extent I'm not sure, is the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, the latter who has held his position for only 4 weeks. It is my opinion at this stage they are being guided by the CEO. In normal circumstances, this would be fine, but we have not come into a council that is faced with normal circumstances, and the CEO is currently involved in numerous legal cases. Following this report, we will be asked to vote on how the CEO's performance review is to be carried out. This is because in the past 3 years, he has not had an annual performance review, and that goes against best practice and to the extreme. It is my understanding that the previous mayor was unable to carry out his legislated role to do the annual review on the CEO due to a perceived conflict of interest between himself and the CEO.
Councillor Farinelli, we're on the organisational restructure, not the second dot point. So could you leave it at that point?
Yep.
And if you want to speak further, when we get to the second dot point.
The last organisational structure was carried out by Bill Davis, and we all know the stigma that surrounded that review and the controversy of his exit. This organisation deserves and, more importantly, requires a proper review and restructure that is devoid of bias and conflict of interest. I am proposing that Council engage someone external to this organisation to carry out the restructure, even if it does cost us $50,000 to $60,000. An independent and external review will also identify realistic and justifiable savings with transparency and confidence, in addition to those already identified by our staff here today. This would negate the cost involved and ensure the best interest of the staff and residents remain paramount. Mr Mayor, for 4 years you battled 30 complaints and investigations, all of which were dismissed by the Office of the Independent Assessor. I spent 4 years in local government between 2012 and 2016, and so it's still pretty fresh in my mind. In all those 4 years, I was never faced with what I've been faced with in the past 4 weeks. I'm horrified by what I'm seeing, and I want answers, and if I must go to the CCC to get those answers, then I will. I was not elected to fight battles that were created by the previous council. In my opinion, I was elected to put an end to them. I've also been elected to do a job, and I'm extremely passionate about that. What is about that has been totally overshadowed by rubbish. I'm going to make a commitment to the community right now that I'm going to do all that I can to put a stop to this by the end of the year, so that I can get on with the job that I want to do, and that's to help my fellow councillors in setting strategic direction that will take this region forward and help our people that are doing it tough. The organisation restructure must happen. We have an obligation to our staff and our community to do it properly and above board. This structure will still be around when COVID-19 is not, so let's not use it as an excuse.
Thank you, Councillor Farinelli. Any further comments from the floor, councillors? If not, is somebody prepared to move the recommendation that takes in the 3 dot points? Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor Pervin, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? It's 5. Against? The motion is carried. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor. Are the descending votes notified to the community?
Pardon?
Are the descending votes notified to the community, or no, just in the minutes?
I can't hear.
Terribly sorry, Councillor Farinelli, I can't hear you.
So you don't announce the descending votes to the report? No? That's just done in the minutes, is it?
The Secretary has recorded that.
Yeah, the minutes record the votes against, Councillor Farinelli. With your permission, Mr Mayor, I'll leave the meeting room now and hand over to Mr Singh. There may be a short delay whilst Ms Johnson joins the meeting. I'll organise that now.
She's coming up now, is she?
That's my understanding, Mr Mayor. I'll have to go and tell her.
Councillors, we're going to have a short delay while we're waiting for the Governance Officer to attend the meeting.
Mr Mayor, I will also go back to the perceived conflict that I mentioned earlier. Again, I don't believe I have a true conflict, but with the most caution under Belcara, I will leave the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baines.
is a Waprianum, and it's a very big leaf. I don't think it will grow much bigger than that. It's been here about maybe 8 years. It's one of my oldest plants. So this is why I like them. They're all different.
It's different colours.
Yeah, different colours in the same plant.
And you put a bit of thought into the design and where you're going to put them all, or?
Yes, you have to.
Yeah.
These ones here, they like light, but
Yes.
they don't want any sun.
Okay.
So, if they don't do well in one spot, I just shift them.
Yeah.
Now, this is fairly special. There's not too many of them around. It's got the red veins with the green.
Yeah.
And I'm moving. Over here, there's a plain green one. But it's got exactly the same flower. And I don't know anyone else who's got one of those, but there probably is some around. These are all soft cane dendrobiums that only flower for about 3 or 4 weeks of the year, but
Councillors, we now move on to the second agenda item, 1.2, the method of the CEO's annual review. The performance appraisal of the CEO is required by law at section 12(4)(d) of the Local Government Act that provides that the Mayor has responsibility for, in part, conducting a performance appraisal of the Chief Executive Officer in the way that is decided by the local government. It is no more than a procedural matter. It is important that I point out that the performance appraisal process, which we are discussing today, goes towards our progress to date, but more importantly lays out what our expectations should be for the delivery of the balance of the CEO's current contract and what key performance indicators should be attached to that. This process is not about offering or not offering a new extended contract to the CEO. I'll repeat that. This process is not about offering or not offering a new or extended contract to the CEO. A totally different process will be undertaken to determine if a future contract is to be offered to the CEO and whether he would accept it or not. This separate process would occur in 2021, as I understand it. I'll now hand over to our Governance Officer, Ms Johnson, to speak to the report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning, councillors. Without having to repeat too much of what the Mayor's just gone through, a review of the Chief Executive Officer's performance against previous performance agreements now needs to be conducted to assess his performance for the periods being reviewed. A performance and development agreement should also be completed for the 2021 period. The previous review was undertaken on the 8th of February 2018. The Local Government Act sets out responsibilities of local government employees, and in particular that the extra responsibilities of this Chief Executive Officer and what he needs to complete. It's appropriate that the performance against these responsibilities is reviewed and assessed, and in addition to progress and achievements is recognised against the corporate plan, the annual operational plans and other relevant documents. Councillors and the Chief Executive Officer have dealt with a number of contentious matters during the period of the CEO's current performance review, and in doing that review and assessment, including submissions for consideration regarding conflicts of interest and conduct matters, we now have in place a brand new council, which makes it fairly unique. There would be the inability for existing councillors who have not worked with the CEO to actually undertake that performance review, which is why in these circumstances it's recommended that an external impartial party be adopted to undertake that review. The Mayor, unlike the other councillors, has extra responsibilities. One of his statutory obligations is to ensure that this review is undertaken, albeit that it is done in a manner that is decided by council itself. Yeah.
So, in being that this is going to be an external review, will the person who's doing the external party doing the review be aware of the whole facts behind the CEO?
Facts?
Like all of the dealings that have been going on?
Could you please elaborate?
As in the legal matters and everything?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
They know about the whole show?
The usual, I can't dictate what whoever this party, but the usual course of events would be for any of the direct reports, as well as councillors who have actually worked with the CEO over the period, to complete surveys and then to be interviewed individually. And Yeah, that's the usual course of events. We've also, in terms of local government, would otherwise use what's called Mercer standards as well. It's around work performance capabilities and competencies that need to be met. So in terms of input from staff and the councillors, all that information will be fed into through those interviews and surveys, I would assume. But I can't preempt what's going to occur.
Ms Johnson, have you finished your report? Any questions from the floor? Councillor Farinelli.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Will any of the councillors sitting here be consulted by this external review?
Again, I can't preempt. My understanding is that it'll be for the periods gone by, and it won't actually, to some extent it may apply, there may need to be some input from existing councillors, but given the short period that you've been here, I'm not quite sure to what extent, I don't know what questions they would ask that would be relevant to his review. So I don't know.
Thanks, Ms Johnson. Councillor Barnes.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Now, the process, if this gets through a vote, we will have a few consultants that we can pick from, and that will be the councillors' core.
No, not necessarily. It's an operational matter. So there will be, we are required as local government and under our procurement policy to go out to the market and find people who are most suitable. It is made very clear through some of the input that we've had from staff, community and external sources that we wouldn't go through consultants that we've used in the past. And we would ensure that whoever is appointed is so far removed and so very impartial, so that at the end of the day, whatever comes out in terms of the findings, the integrity of that recommendation will be, as best as we can, retained.
Any further questions for the officer? If not, would somebody like to move the recommendation .1.2, please? It's moved by Councillor Tui, seconded by Councillor Pervin. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. That concludes our special meeting. Thank you.
Mate, we've made it to the beautiful Wheeler Island, part of the family group, only a couple of kilometres off Mission Beach.
It's unbelievable how close it is to the mainland, yet you could be anywhere in the world. You know, the turtles poking their heads up, the rainforest coming down to the fringing reef, the eagles that welcome us on entry. Mate, it's magic.
Let's call it ours for the day, mate.
Beauty. Incredible what you'll find washed up on the beach. That's the taste of summer.